Hi everyone, it's Prannoy from India. Our next speaker joins us from the world of football. Jan Ekstrand is an expert in injury prevention and management, and he will discuss how you can safeguard your players' well-being while optimizing performance.
I got this feeling inside my bones. It goes electric wavy when I turn it on.
Thank you very much for inviting me. I will talk about football or soccer in my presentation. And actually, my whole presentation is information from the UEFA, the European Football Associations. This started in 2001 when UEFA felt that they had a duty as an international organization of those who had football as an occupation to study the hazards of the occupation and the risks. So it was their duty, and they started an injury study with the aim to preserve the health of the players and to increase performance. So they invited all the best teams in Europe to participate. And as you can see on this slide, all the best teams, male teams participate. And this study has continued for 23 years. And many of these teams have sent data to us in the research group every month. They don't do that to be nice to us. They do it because they get the information back. 5 years ago, they decided also to let me see if I go back, to do a study in women's injuries. And as you can see here, it's the best teams and the female teams are also participating in the study. If you look at what I will try to share with you is information from these 20 years of professional level in another sport, in football. And the most important experience is that coaches are key. You are key for your injury situation in your team, in your club, in your country, because you are deciding the load of the players. So coaches are key for injury prevention and performance. Some coaches are really good in avoiding injuries. Others have some more problems. Now, another important lesson is that the bottom line at professional level, I think in football, but I think also in other sports like badminton, it is winning matches. It's the bottom line, it's the why of sports at professional level. It's not winning fair play trophy, it's not being nice, it's not being having good social contact, it's winning and performing. Now, the question is then how to win matches and trophies. And I will try to give some practical information from football. What you need is, and I think that's the same as badminton, what you need to win trophies and matches is that you need your players in good health. And we have shown in football that injuries and performance are correlated. We have published this, we have studied it, there is scientific evidence. It's natural. If you don't have your players available, you will have less chance to perform and win matches. Now, the key to avoid injuries is, again, player availability. If you look in football, your colleagues in football, the coaches, what they are really interested in from the medical part and what they are interested in is player availability. And player availability is the key for performance. And also for the youth development, every injury is a notch in their development, as you know. Here's a graph showing one bar for each team one season. And the blue is player availability at matches. And the blue part is the availability, and the red part is the unavailability. And it's in football mostly injuries. It's very rare that they are away because of sickness or other health problems. Injuries is the big problem. As you can see, there are a great difference between teams, but there were about 10 teams that managed to have a player availability of more than 90%. That's the benchmark we have in football. And every sport has to find its own benchmark, but in football it's 90%, whether it's professional or amateur. Try to have 90% availability. Those 10 teams that had more than 90% availability, they won the trophies. Here's another way of looking at this. Here's one Champions League teams in Europe that during the 14 seasons had 6 different coaches. And they won 16 trophies during these 14 years. And that were trophies were accepted by UEFA, such as the Champions League, National League, and so on. And they won 14 of these 16 trophies when they had coaches which managed to have availability of players of more than the average of other Champions League teams. And it also means that in the national league play, they were also more successful and had more points than this team used to have. So having players available means winning more trophies. Now the question is then, the practical question, how do you avoid injuries? What do you do practically? And the first thing I would say, and you have already started, that is you need to do an injury study. An injury study is the first step in injury prevention. What you do with an injury study is you find out which injuries are the most common in badminton, how often do they occur, and even more important, what are the consequences for the players, the teams, of these injuries. Of course, the injury pattern is different in different sports. In football, the big problem is muscle injuries and hamstring injuries especially. And one thing an injured athlete always ask us medical people is, when there is an injury, when can I play again? When can I get back to my sport? And with an injury study, you get the information. We have 26,000 injuries in a database, so we have very safe and robust data about what is the expected absence from training and matches, what is the normal re-injury rates, etc. As I said, hamstring injury is the bigger problem. What we have found, you can also, with an injury study, follow the trends over the years. What we have seen in football is that hamstring injury has increased over the years. So it has double in proportion of all injuries. And that is probably due to an evolution in the play. The top level football play is in a much higher intensity nowadays than it used to be 20 years ago, which you all can see on TV. And you know, when you move with a high intensity, there's the risk for muscle injury, especially hamstring injury. You can see that on the World Championship in track and field now, with the sprinters having these injuries. So it's a reflection of a change of intensity in the play. The step 2 in injury prevention is to find out what are the reasons behind the injury, what are causing the problem, and which are the modifiable risk factors. There are some risk factors which you can change, for example, age and previous injury. But there are most risk factors that you can do anything to avoid injuries. So what we do is we ask the experienced people on the field. We gather the team doctors of all these Champions League teams every year to discuss different matters. And we asked them already 10 years ago, what are the most important factors to prevent injuries in elite male football? Now, my guess at that time was that they would probably say economy. It's important to have many doctors, many physiotherapists, good equipment, good playing pitches and so on. They didn't even mention economy. They mentioned 4 factors, which were a surprise to me, a surprise to many others, and these were the 4 factors. The most important factors to prevent injuries in elite professional football is, first, leadership style of coaches. Again, you are important. Second, load on players. Then internal communication and well-being of players. If you look at, for example, well-being of players, that is something that is outside they are human beings as all of us. They have personal problems. Do they have a good relation? Do they have friends? Do they have support by the coach? Do they sleep at night? And so on. I'm a professor at the university department in Sweden, which is doing studies about health problems in general population, and there are studies showing that these factors causing being dependent for the injury situation in a workplace are almost the same. Any workplace, it's about the leadership style of the bosses, it's about internal communication. Lack of communication is a serious problem. A load on the employees. If you load them too much, they get burnout. If you load them too little, they get bored. And well-being of employees is the same as for all of us. It's outside the working place, but still influencing the employees or the athletes. For example, in professional football, if you come like a Brazilian player to England and you bring your family, your wife, and suddenly the player is happy, well paid and so on, but the wife says, I don't understand English, I don't have any friends, the children have no schools, I hate it, I want to go home. How can you perform well if you have a family situation which is stressing you all the time? So there are different kinds of taking care of these things. So if we look at the impact of leadership style on coaches, we studied, there are 3 general leadership styles. You say that there is the authoritarian leadership style, very common in military and police. You govern from above. You say, this is the way it is, this is what you have to do. There is the transformational or democratic leadership style, which is more popular. You try to convince the staff around you about the goal and how we should get there, and you communicate. And the third one is laissez-faire. Okay, you know how to play, go out and have fun. The transformational leadership style is the one being very successful in business and so on. So we studied the leadership style and found that those who had a more democratic leadership style were more successful in avoiding injuries. But on the other hand, the most common in leadership style in football is the authoritarian. So I don't know if that is from tradition or so on. But those who were more transformational or for example, gives encouragement and recognition to the staffs and the players, treats staff and players like individuals. Like Alex Ferguson said to the team doctor in Manchester United, I've chosen you because you are the best and I have full confidence in you. Or the German national team coach who said, when they were world champions, he said, we want a total team around the players and we need to work together like a machine because the success is depending on every one of us. If you look at internal communication, we found that the internal communication between the medical team and the coaching team was very important for the injury situation. And communication is also not only between the medical team and the coaching team, it's also between the coaches and the players, just as mentioned here before. And you have new coaches every second season and new players all the time. And you need to communicate your vision, your style to the players. The players have to communicate with each other, which was also mentioned here when we had double. They have to communicate. Where are you standing? What are you doing? And you need to know what does your colleague, where does he want the ball and so on. So, and another thing which probably is better in sports, in maybe other sports compared to football, the problem in football is that they have difficulties in communication because they have two big teams around too many staffs around the team. They usually have 30 persons. It's very difficult to communicate with 30 persons. The ideal, according to science, is ideal for communication is 8 to 9 persons. Some clubs said, we don't have the economy to match the really big clubs. We need to be smarter. What we do is we reduce the numbers of players, of staff around the team, and we have communication every day. So the coaches are key and to prevent injuries. So what can you do then practically? What can teams do to avoid injuries? Again, what we do is we listen and learn from people working on the field. We ask them, you working 24/7 with the best players and the best teams in the world, what do you say? What are your opinions? Because it's very difficult to be randomized scientific studies. It's not possible on elite level. So, for example, we asked them, what are the risk factors for the injuries in elite football? And there's another experience which is not so much discussed in the literature, but a certain experience from our 25 years. And there's a great difference between injury prevention at amateur level and elite level. At amateur level, it's usually about strength and stamina of the athlete. You need to strengthen your muscles, you need to increase flexibility, your coordination. So they have weaknesses. At elite level, they are already very well trained. There are other factors that are more important at elite level. I would be surprised if that is not also the case in badminton. I don't know much about badminton. I just guess that this is the case. If we look at risk factors for hamstring injuries, for example, it's the same for males and females team. So in football, there is more difference inside gender between female players at elite level compared to amateur level than there is between male and female players at elite level. At elite level, it's quite the same. Hamstring injury is the most common injury, and the risk factors for hamstring injury are the same in a male and female team. If you look at here, hamstring injuries, each bar here is one team. And you see there is a great difference between teams. There's a large variation. What we do is we have an approach which I could recommend to other sports. That is, we call it the search of excellence. We go to the best teams that are best performing and have lowest injury and ask them, what are you doing? It might be other factors, but confounding factors, but that is what we do. We use this sort of scientific studies where we say the proof of the cake is the eating. So what happened now? So we asked them, the best teams here, the 7 best teams, among those 14 who were playing in Champions League for the latest 3 seasons. We asked them, what do you do to prevent injuries? And as you can see here, the green teams are the top performers. That's their injury situation, and the red teams are those less successful. And now I will mention 6 or 7 or 8 items that they suggested they are using for avoiding injuries. And first of all, they establish an optimal communication. Again, communication is vital, especially between the coaching staff and the medical staff. Close cooperation, they have daily meetings. They also establish an optimal load on players. They avoid training, loading, matching, leading to deficiencies, or they use individual periodization for all players. Further, they use regular exposure to high-intensity actions during trainings, because training should mimic matches. It must be the same in other sports like badminton. You must train of that you're supposed to play on with the same intensity and the same movements. They have individualized pre-activation regimes, means that almost all teams here at this level, before they go out to a normal training on the pitch, they go to the gym and they have stations where they have individualized training based on their needs. Something I would be interested in seeing, for example, in badminton is, what about the long travels? How does that affect players? Do long travels have a negative effect on performance or injury risk? And we found that many football teams, they devote part of their pre-season to promotional travels. They earn a lot of money by that, but they get a lot of injuries, and they have too short period to prepare the players for the demands of the season. So this was actually very clear. And finally, we found that it's important to have stability around the team. And if we look at this factor, it must be the same in all sports. What about change of staff around Champions League team? We did this study. What happened? It says that, again, almost half of the coaches were new for each season. You have heard about that in Premier League, it's the same, and so on. Any replacement of the staffs around the team, so the coaches, the head coach, the fitness coach, the team doctor, and the physiotherapist, head of physiotherapy. If you change them, that will increase your injury. Maybe due to you have to start communication and cooperation from the beginning. The real problem was when a new head coach brought his own fitness coach for a new season. That increased the hamstring injury risk 3 times because it's a change of load. So the stability of staff around the team is important. This would be very interesting to discuss in other sports like badminton. What is the staff around the team? How big is it? How do you change it? Or what happens if you change it? So the experience from male Champions League teams in Europe is actually that the head coach, and this is probably special for football, the head coach is mainly like a conductor of an orchestra. That's the person that discusses with media, who is the face outwards, while that person usually has a staff around them that do the practical things. The medical teams at elite level are usually like a fire brigade. They put out fires caused by the coaches, normally because of errors made by the coaches. So the medical team has to stop those burnings. While the fitness coach in football are seen to be more important because they are the ones deciding about the load on the players, and that the load of the players is the most important risk factor in football. It's usually due to fatigue. The muscle injuries are due to fatigue. It could be muscle fatigue due to too many matches or too hard training, but it could also be mental fatigue, being evaluated by media every week and having to play at your top and every week and so on. So another thing that is also important is the language in the sport. Every sport has its own language, and a problem in football has been that the medical team and the coaching team have different language. The medical team do not understand the football language. Some coaches like Mourinho starts asking a new doctor, are you a doctor or are you a football doctor? Do you understand football? And there is a special language. They talk in football about basic actions and football actions. Basic actions are like running, jumping, and so on. It's actions without involvement of the brain. It's no decision making. So, but all football action is always about receiving information. Where is the ball? Where are the opponents? Where are your teammates? And second, a decision of how should you handle? Should you run there? Or the third is execute. So you have involvement of the brain all the time. So you need to train things where you also involve the brain and not only train running, for example. So, and there is an area where this communication is developed, and that's the flight area, because they're so important that they understand each other, the pilot and the control tower. So they have a certain language, alpha, beta, etc., and which is the same all over the world. And I think that in sports you need to do the same. So in football, some teams have already said that if you have a new person and new medical people, you should start with a language lesson. You should understand the football language and not talk about aerobic exercise, but it should be football actions, for example. So my take-home message is that to win matches and trophies, you need to avoid injuries. Second, coaches, you are the most important person. You are the key to players' health. The road to injury prevention is to having an injury study. I know that the International Badminton Federation has already started the journey by having a consensus about how to carry out an injury study with definition, which I saw on a poster outside, and I've seen the article about this. Very good. But such a study should, as in football, be initiated and carried out by the International Badminton Federation, because it's their duty to keep track of what the health of their professional players, and so they should be the one take initiative to also fund and carry out an injury study, which will provide a lot of information to avoid injuries and increase performance. Thank you.